Are there any questions that I can answer at this time?
A couple.
Great.
You're running as a Republican?
I am on the Republican and the Conservative line, yes.
Okay. Do you feel that the current incumbent is not living up to what you just outlined there?
Well, here's what I think about that. Well, I'm going to back up a little bit. When you interview for a job, in this case 130,000 employers were interviewing her, you present yourself to an employer with particular tasks that you think that you can accomplish. I believe that Janet did that. And then what happens is you're given that job and you're given time and you're given money and you're given patience and you're given trust. And that's what happened, to be able to fulfill those responsibilities. I've looked at her website. I see where she stands on the issues. She stands on the issues of limited government. She stands on the issues of lower taxes. Many of those things we have in common, but unfortunately, if you look at the state of New York, we don't have a limited government. We don't have a smaller government. We certainly don't have fewer taxes. So here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that after you've been given some time to do that job and you're not able to perform in that capacity, that maybe it's time for the employer to start thinking that there are other candidates out there who may actually be able to do that job. So that's what I'm saying.
Is there one particular issue that you're the most divided on, that you really take issue with where she stands or how she's voted?
That I'm most divided on? Well, in her recent voting record, I would definitely say her vote on gay marriage. I would have definitely voted no on that position.
You think that was a poor vote for up here? You think the vast majority of the constituency up here wouldn't support that vote?
Absolutely. I do.
Could I ask one more?
Sure.
If there will be a primary,
Yes.
probably in June, if Janet wins the Republican primary, would you still look to run on another party line?
Yes. I'm seeking the Conservative endorsement, so yes, I would. But at this point, I really believe that we have a great shot at winning the primary. So, and I'm thinking, we don't know whether it's going to be September or June. You know, we haven't gotten that information yet. So it certainly benefits me, you know, if it's a little bit further out, so I get a little bit more time to get my name out there. Yes. Bill?
You're an educator. What in God's name can a state assembly person do to right the ship with education in New York State?
I think, well, I've already been in touch with a variety of superintendents in the district, both in Franklin County, Clinton County, and I've reached out to one in St. Lawrence County. All of them are telling me the exact same thing. The funding streams and the way in which funding is generated in the state of New York is really making it difficult for the education process. And here's the other thing I think about that. This whole structure of competing grants that's happening in the state of New York right now, when you compete, there's always a loser. I don't think the word loser should ever be associated with education, because the losing end of that is students, okay? So the whole revenue generating stream of I think it's really hard, even for private industry, for government industry, and for the education process, when you're looking at developing a long-range plan on how you're going to get from point A to point D, let's say, and you're now out there competing year after year for those monies, how can you possibly generate any kind of long-term goals or set goals, or even know where you're going to be in 2 or 3 years if you don't even know if the money is there? And that's what's happened in education. You know, we haven't seen increases for a number of years, and now they're decreasing funding and they're making us compete for grants. And then that grant money is tied directly to the race to the top, which is President Obama's nationalizing of the education system. So, you know, there's a little bit of funky stuff going on there with regard to the revenue stream in education. So that has to stop. They also told me about the difficulties in state ed as far as the bureaucracy is concerned. They're not even lined up with their requirements with when it is we do business in education. So they said if they could just cut down on the paperwork alone, even consolidate some of those structures, it would make things so much easier for education, and we would, you know, be able to use those dollars elsewhere. But anybody else, Jeff?
2 weeks ago, I think it was, Governor Cuomo was here talking about how the state has turned the ship around and everything's so much better and we're on the right track. It's in contrast to what you just outlined.
Well, I'm sure it is in contrast to what I just outlined. Sure, I'm a taxpayer. I think everybody else in this room is just doing our job and trying to live every day. I don't feel like things are any better. Maybe he feels like things are a little bit more impressive down in Albany, but that hasn't reached me yet. I don't know if it's reached any of you yet, but I'm still feeling very much the stress and strain of not being represented well in Albany, the voice of the North Country not really resounding down there. I really feel like local government is where we start, and we move our way up from there. And I think we've gotten into, unfortunately, the mess of waiting to hear from Albany instead of Albany waiting to hear from us. And that's where I want to start. I want to start with the voice going from the bottom up, and that's from us talking to Albany instead of Albany always talking to us.
And just to follow up on what Joe said, another thing that the governor talked about when he was up here was that if he will be sending the legislature his own teacher evaluation
Yes.
system, expecting the legislature to pass that within a year, and then schools that don't endorse that by next year, 2013, will lose out on state aid. Do you take issue with this whole teacher evaluation system and the way that the governor seems to be, in some people's opinion, trying to railroad it through the legislature?
Well, this is absolutely my area of expertise, I guess you could say. So, yeah, the new APPR system, excuse me, we're very familiar with in Plattsburgh because we were one of 5 districts across the state of New York that actually wrote and helped to develop the whole APPR system. So we're very intimately involved in that. And it is a very cumbersome process. It's 10 hours of evaluation per staff member by each administrator. So in Plattsburgh High School alone, we have 90 people who will need to be evaluated. So that's 900 man-hours of administration. I'm not saying that the teacher evaluation system shouldn't have been overhauled, but I think we went from this to that with very little in between. And as a result of that, it's going to make it very difficult for us to continue to do the business of educating children while also worrying about the evidence finders that need to be put together and all of the things that are going to take us from point A to point Z with nothing in between. So do I have issue with the way he's trying to railroad it through the legislature? I think in my speech I definitely said that. I don't necessarily agree with that kind of an action. And I also think that there need to be people down there who need to stand up and say, this is unpractical, it's impractical. It's not going to work. I think that we need to move in that direction. As an educator, I know we needed to do something different. But like I said, this is a beast. It's an enormous undertaking, and being given 1 year, and now on top of it, it's an unfunded mandate that they don't provide any additional monies for. They've decreased our revenue stream, but they've increased the amount of things we have to do on top of it, and they expect the job to get done. So yeah, I think it's a big problem.